Welcome to Cold Case Secrets, where silence hides the darkest truths. Tonight, we uncover the chilling story of Keith Gentry, a husband found fighting for his life in his own bed. If you're drawn to real-life mysteries and untold crimes, subscribe now and join me as we dig into the secrets the world tried to forget. In a quiet Texas town, a husband is found fighting for his life in his own bed. No break-in, no struggle, just a calm 911 call, and a wife whose voice betrayed no fear. But behind that calm was a secret darker than anyone imagined. You're watching Cold Case Secrets, where the truth never stays buried. The quiet betrayal, the Darlene Gentry story. It was a cold, gray morning in Robinson, Texas, the kind of quiet suburban dawn where nothing seemed out of place. But inside one brick home on Surrey Ridge Lane, a man was dying. Keith Gentry, 31 years old, lay bleeding in his bed. The single gunshot wound to his head had left him barely clinging to life. Beside him, the house was still. No signs of struggle, no shattered glass, no forced entry. And yet, something was terribly wrong. At 6:10 a.m., a calm female voice broke the silence. 911, what's your emergency? This is Darlene Gentry, she said softly. My husband's been shot. Please hurry. Her tone was eerily steady, too steady for someone who had just found their husband covered in blood. As first responders raced to the home, the dispatcher tried to keep her talking, but Darlene's answers were short, measured, and strangely emotionless. When police arrived, the scene was unsettling. Keith was still alive, barely breathing, blood staining the sheets. Darlene stood at the doorway, her hands clasped tightly in front of her, eyes dry. The back door was open, unlocked, and a light breeze drifted through the kitchen. Drawers were pulled open, jewelry scattered, as if the house had been ransacked. But the officers could tell it was too neat, too staged. Keith was rushed to the hospital. He never woke up. Later that evening, as word spread, neighbors described Darlene and Keith as the perfect couple. A nurse and a fireman, raising two young sons, with a house they'd built together and a future that seemed steady. No one could imagine why anyone would want them harmed. But police had questions. There are no signs of forced entry, no broken locks, and nothing, not even a smudge, on the back door where the supposed burglar had entered. When detectives sat down with Darlene, she appeared composed, almost rehearsed. She explained that she had been out that morning, taking her son to the babysitter, and when she came home, she found Keith. She claimed to have no idea who would want to hurt him. But behind the calm voice and carefully chosen words, cracks began to form. Keith's colleagues told police he had been worried. The couple had been fighting about money, about Darlene's spending, about something deeper he wouldn't discuss. In the weeks leading up to the shooting, Keith had told a close friend, "If anything ever happens to me, don't look too far." Detectives started looking closer at Darlene. She was charming, composed, polite, but distant. When asked about her husband's life insurance policy, her voice didn't waver. "Yes," she said, "he has one, a pretty big one. It was worth $100,000. Darlene had been the beneficiary. Police collected evidence from the scene, a single shell casing, a pair of latex gloves found behind the house, and a few smudged footprints near the back door. At first, it looked random, but the footprints matched Darlene's shoe size. The gloves were traced back to a box found in the Gentry's garage. When detectives showed Darlene the evidence, she remained calm. She said she often wore gloves while cleaning, that anyone could have used them. Her tone was flat, clinical, like a nurse explaining a routine chart. But the calm didn't last. When she learned that Keith had died, Darlene's eyes welled up for the first time. Yet her tears came not when police told her he was gone. But when they told her they need to take her in for more questioning, the community mourned Keith's death. At his funeral, Darlene wept publicly, clutching her sons, whispering to friends that she would never rest until the killer was found. But investigators were already focusing on her, quietly, carefully. A few weeks later, Darlene called detectives. She said she wanted to help find whoever did this. She even mentioned she had an idea. Maybe it was a breaking gone wrong. She described jewelry missing from her bedroom, drawers ransacked, and an open door. But when police returned to the house, they found the missing jewelry right where it should have been. And then came the mistake. The kind of careless move that racks even the most careful plan. From where are you joining the investigation to Nick? HT, let me know in the comments. 2 months after Keith's death, a tip led investigators to a small pond just outside of town, a place Darlene had been seen visiting late at night alone. When divers went in, they found something chilling beneath the water. A black plastic garbage bag. Inside, a pistol wrapped in a towel. Ballistics confirmed it. This was the murder weapon. And fingerprints on the towel? Darlene's. Police brought her in. She denied everything, insisting she was being framed. But when investigators revealed that she had been caught on camera, buying similar towels and garbage bags days before the murder, the facade began to crack. Behind the suburban facade of calm and composure was a cold calculation. A woman who wanted her husband gone, not in anger, but in convenience. Because life, it seemed, would be easier without Keith. The motive came into focus: money, debt, and a growing resentment. Keith's life insurance policy was her ticket out of a troubled marriage. But detectives needed her to say it. They invited her for one last interview. This time, she wasn't so calm. Her hands trembled as she denied, deflected, and finally broke into silence. The room grew cold, and after a long pause, Darlene whispered, "I didn't mean for it to happen." The silence that followed was heavy. She later claimed the shooting was accidental, that the gun just went off. But evidence told another story. There were no signs of a struggle, no defensive wounds, no chaos. Keith had been shot as he slept. It wasn't an accident. It was an execution. When the words left her mouth, the room fell silent. Detectives leaned forward, careful not to break the moment. Darlene Gentry sat across from them, hands folded, face pale, eyes distant. Her voice, usually steady and calm, now trembled. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she repeated, but she wouldn't say more. For investigators, the confession was enough to expose the truth, even if she wasn't ready to face it. They believed Darlene had pulled the trigger while Keith slept, then staged the house to look like a robbery gone wrong. The motive? Money, control, and a life she thought she deserved. But building a case wasn't easy. There were no direct witnesses, no clear confession, and a woman who still maintained her innocence. So detectives went back to the evidence, one piece at a time. The gun found in the pond matched the bullet from Keith's skull. The towel wrapped around it carried Darlene's prints, and the store receipts, dated 2 days before the murder, for the exact brand of towel and trash bags. When prosecutors laid the evidence on the table, the story that once seemed unbelievable began to take shape. Still, Darlene didn't flinch. She smiled in court, spoke softly to reporters, and told friends that the police were wrong. She said someone had set her up, that she loved Keith too much to ever hurt him. But her actions told another story. In the weeks after Keith's death, before she was arrested, Darlene went shopping. Not for groceries, not for the children, but for a new car. And she called the insurance company, asking when she could expect the payout. That call sealed her fate. You've been watching Cold Case Secrets. If you found this case chilling, subscribe now for more true stories. In early 2007, nearly 2 years after Keith's death, Darlene Gentry was charged with murder. Her friends were stunned. Her family refused to believe it. How could Darlene kill Keith? One neighbor asked. They were the picture of happiness. But behind closed doors, things had been unraveling for a long time. Keith had confided in his parents that Darlene had been spending money recklessly. He had talked about separation, maybe even divorce. And for Darlene, divorce meant losing the house, the car, the comfort. She wasn't going to let that happen. During her trial, prosecutors painted a chilling portrait. A woman who saw her husband not as a partner, but as an obstacle. Someone who had grown tired of the marriage and decided to end it on her own terms. They replayed her 911 call. The calm tone, the lack of panic, and the subtle sound of movement in the background, as if she were pacing, not in fear, but in thought. Experts testify that the crime scene had been carefully staged. Drawers pulled open just enough to look disturbed. Jewelry boxes tipped, but nothing of real value taken. The open back door, left ajar, but without fingerprints. It was a performance, and Darlene had written the script. Her defense team tried to argue that the shooting was accidental, that she had picked up the gun and it discharged by mistake. But the autopsy told a different story. The angle of the bullet, the lack of struggle, the calmness of her tone afterward. It was all too deliberate. Forensic analysts testified that the gun had been fired from a distance of about 2 feet. Close enough for accuracy, far enough to avoid blood spray. The jury listened in silence. When it was time for the verdict, Darlene sat straight, expression unreadable. The courtroom was packed. Neighbors, reporters, and Keith's family, holding hands in the front row. The foreman stood, guilty of murder. No gasp came from Darlene. She blinked once, nodded slightly, and stared ahead. The mask she had worn for so long didn't crack. Not even then. The judge sentenced her to 60 years in prison. As she was led away, Keith's mother whispered, "Justice, finally." But justice felt hollow. A young father was gone. 2 little boys would grow up without either parent. And a quiet Texas neighborhood would never forget the morning its peace was shattered. Aftermath. From her prison cell, Darlene continued to claim her innocence. In letters to friends, she wrote that the evidence was circumstantial, that she had been betrayed by investigators who wanted a headline. She even told one reporter that she still loved Keith, that she prayed for him every day. But detectives never doubted their conclusion. They had seen the truth in the smallest of details. The receipts, the gloves, the calm in her voice. They said no true victim could have sounded like that. Years later, the story of Darlene Gentry still echoes through Robinson, Texas. The house on Surrey Ridge Lane has new owners now. The pond where the gun was found has grown murky with weeds and moss. But the memory of what happened there, the betrayal, the cold calculation, still lingers like a shadow. Neighbors say they sometimes see lights flicker in that house late at night. A porch light that turns on by itself. A faint creak, as though someone were pacing the hallway. Maybe it's just imagination. Or maybe, as one old neighbor put it quietly, Keith never really left. In the end, this wasn't a story about passion or rage. It was about control and the mask of normalcy that can hide something far darker. Darlene Gentry's story reminds us that evil doesn't always wear a monster's face. Sometimes it smiles softly. Sometimes it calls 911 with a steady voice. And sometimes it sleeps right beside you. You've been listening to Cold Case Secrets. If you found this case chilling,
don't let the
subscribe for more
cold.
True stories of quiet betrayals,
Subscribe
hidden
to Cold
crimes,
Case Secrets,
and justice that came too late. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and never stop looking beneath the surface.